Discover the amazing transformation. Woman frees starving horse, revealing its incredible spirit. Sarah pulled her car onto the gravel back road, desperate to get home before the sun dipped below the Montana horizon. The weight of the world pressed down on her shoulders. Her husband's recent layoff echoed in her mind, each unpaid bill a reminder of their crumbling financial stability. She sighed, barely hearing her girls chattering in the back seat, their innocence a stark contrast to the suffocating anxiety clawing at her. The fleeting joys of motherhood often fell overshadowed by a nagging sense of failure. Who was she, a veterinarian with a passion for animals, when her own family felt like it was slipping through her fingers? Then she spotted it, a gaunt horse tied up behind a crumbling barn. Its ribs protruded sharply, its eyes hollowed and desperate, a silent plea. Sarah's heart dropped. What if no one cared? What if she didn't intervene? Could she even afford the time or resources to help? Just then, a voice in her echoed from her upbringing, a belief in justice, even for the forgotten. Could she? Should she? Sarah's mind raced, a cacophony of uncertainty swirling as she pulled over. The windy air whipped through her hair, each breath thickening with guilt. She already struggled to provide for her daughters. What would the neighbors say? The judgment from the townsfolk, steeped in their narrow-minded views, haunted her thoughts. Yet looking into that horse's eyes, she saw a reflection of her own despair. She had to do something. And so, she stepped out, determination fighting against her swirling doubts. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Rescuing the horse, whom she named Spirit, became Sarah's silent rebellion against the pressures that choked her. Each day she devoted herself to Spirit, despite the judgments of her neighbors who questioned her sanity. Focus on your family, they'd sneer, while Sarah tended to Spirit's wounds, nurturing him back to life. Yet, each harsh word, each shot of doubt, carved into her resolve. What was her obligation, her family, or the spirit of the innocent? A storm brewed within her, an unrelenting fear of what might happen if she tilted the delicate balance of her life. As weeks passed, Spirit's gradual resurgence rekindled a sense of purpose long buried beneath her anxieties. The town began to recognize him as a symbol of hope, yet with attention came scrutiny. They looked to her for guidance, the same folks who once whispered derision now seeking her counsel. Was she to take on leadership, to become a source of inspiration? As the pressure mounted, lines blurred in her mind. Could she balance this newfound dedication to an animal with the instability of her family life? With each thoughtful glance from Spirit, Sarah felt the weight of her choices cut deeper, each look a silent challenge, igniting questions she hadn't prepared to answer. Just when she thought she had found footing in her chaotic reality, a confrontation with a local rancher shook her. He accused her of meddling, of rising above her station. His disdain pierced through her fragile confidence. A raging tempest of doubt surged within her as she questioned everything she stood for. Did she dare to defy norms for the sake of a creature that had become a part of her soul? The stakes had escalated. The community watched with a mix of admiration and skepticism, teetering on the edge of expectations and judgment, while Sarah grappled with the raw, agonizing realization that she now faced the ultimate dilemma. Could she summon the courage to redefine what was true compassion amidst the clamor of survival? The scales hung heavy, and she felt her grip slipping. Would she follow her heart, even when it threatened everything she had? The sun rose over the mountains, casting a warm golden hue across the valley. However, Sarah felt chilled. As she stood in her barn, brushing Spirit's coat, the warmth from the horse did little to thaw the ice that had formed around her heart. She had made her choice, but the weight of that decision pressed on her harder than ever. The confrontation with the local rancher lingered in her mind. His words echoed relentlessly as if they had stamped themselves into the very fabric of her being. "Who do you think you are?" he had said. Those 5 words, heavy with disdain, hung between them, reverberating with each hesitant stroke of the brush. Could a mere veterinarian with unkempt hair and a fraying resolve truly stand for something greater? Here she was, imagining herself a savior of sorts, but deep down, her self-doubt clawed relentlessly at her. The girls popped into the barn, their chatter breaking her reverie. "Mom, can we ride Spirit today?" they asked, bright-eyed. Their innocence was a stark reminder of the weight Sarah bore. She simply nodded, masking her turmoil as she led Spirit out of his pen. Inside, she was wrestling with a tempest of emotions, fear of judgment, and the undeniable urge to stand by what felt right. As they saddled Spirit, an unexpected gust of wind swept through the barn, rattling the corrugated iron sheets. Sarah paused, her heart racing. Here was the horse, a symbol of resilience which had, much like her, clawed its way back to life from the brink of despair. Each day spent with Spirit entwined their fates, wrapping her heart in a complicated coil of loyalty and commitment that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. The ride began, and with each galloping stride, a once-hidden strength stirred within Sarah. She directed Spirit confidently through the meadows, each leap forward propelling her thoughts into focus. This was more than just an escapade. It was an assertion of her right to exist outside others' expectations. Slowly Sarah let go of the comments, the sneers, the doubts that had stolen her peace. There was something liberating about breaking through the shroud of judgment. They reached a small rise, overlooking the valley, a sweeping panorama that took her breath away. For a moment, silence permeated the air. Here, atop the world, she realized she had a choice. Let the voices of doubt consume her, or embrace her identity as a healer, not just of animals, but of her own spirit. But with realizations came new complications. What if she committed herself publicly to Spirit, perhaps starting a fundraiser for neglected animals, only to face rejection? What if she put her heart into an initiative only to find herself abandoned once again when the townsfolk inevitably turned against her? She could not ignore the risks. Back at the barn, as Sarah untacked Spirit, an unfamiliar resolve hardened in her chest. She was inching toward a precipice of self-definition, but was it a step toward liberation or potential disaster? Every ounce of her experience as a veterinarian stitched together a patchwork of confidence, yet the fear of failure loomed ominously. The path ahead was unclear, shrouded in uncertainty. As Sarah contemplated the paradox of her situation, dust motes danced in the air, reflecting flickers of light amidst the shadows of doubt. What would it mean for her to be vulnerable, to seek support in a community that seemed split over her actions? The ruthlessness of the local rancher nagged at her. Did she dare to confront him again? To express her love for Spirit openly, with all its implications? With a deep breath, she made a decision. She would forge ahead and define her truth. As she glanced at Spirit, the quiet strength in his eyes met hers, and she felt the remnants of her fear replace themselves with a flicker of hope. Now she stood on the threshold of courage. But first, she needed to confront not just her feelings for Spirit, but the townsfolk who watched with curious eyes. Would they honor her decision or deride her efforts? The moment of truth was drawing closer. A pivotal choice awaited her, and the world seemed to hold its breath as she prepared to step into the unknown and embrace her calling. A confrontation loomed on the horizon, and she felt the tension coiling tighter around her heart, ready for a clash of wills. What would she discover about herself when faced with the naysayers demanding answers? The next morning dawned with a sharpness that mirrored Sarah's resolve. The air felt electric, as if the world was waiting for her decision. She had spent the night wrestling with her thoughts, jotting down ideas for her plans to advocate for neglected animals. The pages were filled with notes on potential fundraising ideas and the names of local influences she could reach out to. Yet, behind that excitement, a constant whisper plagued her. What if it all fell apart? As she stepped outside, Spirit greeted her with a low whinny, reminding her of the bond they had forged. Taking a deep breath, she approached him, resting her hand on his neck. With every beat of his heart, she felt her own slowly sink in determination. "Today is the day," she murmured. Despite the heavy burden woven into her thoughts, she knew in her heart that asserting herself mattered more than the opinions of a handful of skeptics. With her daughters off at school, Sarah had time to plan. She set her sight on a meeting with the local animal welfare group. If she could rally support, then her idea could morph from a dream into a reality. Her fingers trembled slightly as she Googled their number. She wasn't just calling to discuss her passion for spirit. She was dialing to affirm her place as an advocate. As the phone rang, Sarah's mind raced. Would they meet her enthusiasm with indifference? Would the local rancher's voice still echo in the background? Or would they see her for what she could be, a leader? The moment someone picked up, a wave of panic surged through her. "Hi, this is Sarah Weller. I'm a veterinarian here in the valley," she said, forcing herself to sound steady. "Nice to meet you, Sarah," the voice said pleasantly. "What can I do for you today?" Her confidence wavered slightly, but she pressed on. "I want to discuss organizing an initiative for rescued animals. I believe we can bring significant awareness to their plight and possibly raise funds to help care for them." The reply was cautious yet intrigued. They were open to the idea, and a discussion was had about reaching out to local businesses and enhancing community involvement. Each word led her deeper into the realm of possibility, igniting a flicker of bravery she had almost forgotten. By the end of the call, she had secured a meeting for next week. A breath of relief washed over her, mingling with excitement. She was moving forward. The rest of the day slipped by as thoughts whirled around in her mind, creating a whirlwind of anxiety and anticipation. How would the townsfolk respond? And what about the rancher? Would he obstruct her plans? Those questions tangled with an unmistakable sense of purpose. She envisioned each hurdle as a stepping stone, a test of her resolve to honor her chosen path. A flicker of laughter caught her attention as her daughters bounded through the door. Their excitement was infectious, acting as a balm to her frayed emotions. They chattered about their day, and Sarah couldn't help but feel a swell of determination to set a positive example for them. "You know, girls, sometimes standing up for what's right means facing criticism," she said, looking into their eager eyes. "But every step taken towards that goal is worth it." As they settled in for the evening, the phone buzzed with a notification, a message from the local rancher. A challenge had been laid down. "I hope you're ready for the fallout when this initiative of yours flops," it read. The words felt like cold water splashed across her determination, yet instead of crumbling, she felt a deeper fire ignite within. She would not let fear dictate her narrative. As darkness cloaked the valley and the laughter from the girls faded into whispers, Sarah sat alone, spirit by her side, reaffirming her decision. The confrontation awaited her, not just with the rancher, but with her own fears. The stakes were climbing, and she was rapidly nearing the edge of something monumental. She was ready to face the naysayers head-on, but first, she needed to gather every ounce of confidence, every shred of hope. The tipping point loomed ever nearer, and the world felt charged with the possibility of change. What would happen when their judgment rang in her ears and all eyes fixed on her? Would her resolve hold firm, or would she falter in the face of opposition? As the dawn broke over the valley, casting gentle hues of orange and pink across the sky, Sarah stood at the window, indulging in an unsettling mix of hope and trepidation. The rancher's message resounded in her mind, a taunting reminder of the looming battle ahead. It felt surreal that her aspirations were now intertwined with the judgments of others, but she understood all too well that this initiative meant more than just raising funds for animals. It was about her standing in the community, a quest for the respect that had eluded her. Today, she would begin drafting a formal proposal for the animal welfare group. The meeting loomed not just as a test of her initiative, but as a defining moment for her identity. Her hands hovered over the keyboard, fingers itching to pour her thoughts into form. As ideas began flowing, it became clear that this was more than just a document. It was a declaration of who she was. Sarah recalled the countless times she had been told to fit in, to be less vocal, to stifle her frustration at injustice. It had suffocated her spirit for far too long. But the fear of failure could no longer reign over her. She had worked too hard for that. She typed faster now, her clear objectives outlining the funds she would need, the partnerships she envisioned, and most critically, the stories of the animals that needed their voices heard. She had no intention of backing down from criticism. Rather, she would use it as fuel. By mid-morning, a burst of energy propelled her to the barn. Spirit whickered softly, as if sensing her motivation. She arranged her thoughts, speaking with him, solidifying her resolve. "We're going to do this together," she said, feeding him treats. The bond felt palpable, and through it she found solace. He was her silent supporter, driving her to pursue what others deemed unworthy. Later, as the hour of her meeting approached, doubt began creeping in again. What if she had misread their enthusiasm? What if they turned her ideas into mere formalities, disregarding her passion? The thought made her stomach twist, but she reminded herself of the countless hours spent with animals who had no voice. It eclipsed her fears. Her thirst for change outweighed her self-doubt. At the table, the representatives of the animal welfare group sat before her, engaged yet impartial. She could see faint glimmers of interest in their eyes, but also traces of skepticism. This was no time for hesitation. As she broke into her presentation, narrating the stories of animals in dire need, her passion ignited. She revealed her vision and shared alluring strategies that had sparked breakthroughs in other communities. The room buzzed with energy, her intensity palpable, and for the first time, Sarah felt seen. But just as she began to feel at ease, the rancher arrived uninvited, striding into the space like a storm. His presence sucked the air from the room. "This is a naive venture, Sarah," he interjected forcefully. "You're playing with lives you don't understand." His words were like ice, but her resolve sparked. "Every life has inherent value," she retorted, surprising even herself with the strength of her voice. "What you see as wild, I see as potential." The moment hung between them, fraught with tension. In that heartbeat, while all eyes were on her, Sarah felt something shift within. This was more than just about the animals. It was about her stance on the world, about allowing herself to be heard, to mean something. The rancher, visibly displeased, leaned in closer. "You really think you can challenge the status quo and come out unscathed? You are risking everything." A murmur swept through the table, igniting a fire in her. She would not back down. Others' doubts would no longer shackle her. As she left the meeting, the adrenaline surged through her veins. This was not just an initiative, it was her moment of transformation. But as she exited through the doors, she couldn't shake the thought. The rancher was right. The fallout might be more than she bargained for. With the weight of her decision pressing down, Sarah questioned how far she was willing to go. Would her fight for the voiceless pull her family into a storm? The air felt thick with possibilities, and she recognized she was on the precipice of transformational conflict, not just with the rancher, but within herself. What would she choose to endure, and was she prepared for what lay ahead? The days following the meeting were a blurry collage of motion and sleepless nights. The rancher's words resonated around her like a persistent echo. "You are risking everything." Each time she found herself alone with her thoughts, the weight of those words pushed against her chest, a constant reminder of the stakes. How could she fight for the voiceless when it felt like her own voice teetered on the edge of silence? Determined, Sarah spent the next week refining her proposal. She corresponded with other local organizations to garner support, reaching out to allies who had once been muted by doubt. The phone calls were met with a mixture of skepticism and encouragement. Some shared their stories of battling local opposition and the backlash they faced, but within their experiences, Sarah unearthed her own convictions, recognizing that she was not alone. As she worked in the barn each day, the soft sounds of the animals enveloped her. The demands of their care became meditative, a stark contrast to the disquiet within her mind. With each sweep of the broom and each handful of feed, she found focus. She began to jot down notes in a weathered journal, applying the lessons learned from the untold stories of other activists. Empowerment came in snapshots. A farmer who gathered his community to save a stray dog. A woman who had chased down a newspaper truck to advocate for local wildlife preservation. They each faced opposition, yet their spirits remained unbroken. Clarity struck during one particularly rainy afternoon. As she cleaned the stalls, the heaviness of her decision began to drift away, replaced by sheer determination. The animals needed her, and her voice could be their advocate. She accepted that disapproval would shadow her every move. It was a part of taking a stand. That evening, sitting cross-legged in front of her laptop, she filmed an impassioned entry for a local website dedicated to animal welfare. In her heart, she knew that vulnerability was strength, and opening up could resonate with those who watched. She spoke candidly about her motivations, the journey from a quiet desire to speak out, to living righteously for animals who could not. Fumbling with her words at first, she found a rhythm as she shared stories of the animals at her ranch, the pain in their eyes, their longing for comfort, and the small victories she witnessed as they began to trust her. With every tale, each sentence crescendoed into an argument for change, her voice transforming from tentative to fervent. The next day, Sarah shared the video on social media, half expecting to be met with derision. Instead, a wave of support washed over her. Friends, family, and acquaintances began reaching out, their encouragement igniting a fire within her. She received messages filled with gratitude from individuals who felt inspired to make their own changes. They shared their own stories, some laced with pain, others with hope. But just as the momentum surged, whispers of opposition emerged. Sarah overheard conversations about her boldness at the local diner, where the rancher's allies gathered. Rumors floated through the small town like wildfire, painting her as a misfit with an overzealous agenda. Her heart raced as the all-too-familiar fingers of doubt skimmed along her consciousness. Was she becoming a target? Suddenly, the real challenge loomed large on the horizon, confronting the rancher and his allies directly. Walking into that lion's den would require not only courage but a crystal-clear sense of purpose. She felt the weight of every encouraging word from supporters, every story shared, and every moment in the barn nudging her closer to that inevitable confrontation. As she prepared for the next town meeting where the rancher would also be present, Sarah asked herself, could she stand her ground and defend not just her initiative, but the very essence of who she was becoming? The time had come to face the rancher, and she could no longer afford to question where her strength came from. Amidst this brewing storm, she realized that protecting the voiceless was as much about her journey of self-discovery as it was about saving animals. With a deep breath, she steeled herself for the inevitable clash that lay ahead. Would she emerge with her vision intact, or would the weight of opposition crush her aspirations? The sun dipped low in the sky, casting a golden hue over the barn as Sarah braced herself for the evening. The meeting loomed like a dark cloud, threatening to overshadow her growing resolve. She reviewed her notes meticulously, feeling a sense of urgency as the clock ticked down to the moment she had rehearsed countless times in her mind. Each point was a lifeline, tethering her to her mission. If I falter, I betray not just myself, but the animals depending on me, she reminded herself. The quiet strength she had nurtured during her time with the animals began to pulse in her veins, quelling her anxiety. Still, doubt crept like shadows through her thoughts. Would logic and honesty penetrate the stubborn walls of opposition she anticipated? As she stepped into the meeting hall, the air thick with tension, the faces of the rancher and his allies greeted her with icy disdain. It wasn't just about defending an initiative, it was a confrontation with her past self, timid and unequipped. But as she scanned the room, the weight of their scrutiny ignited her inner fire. She was no longer a bystander to her life. When her moment came to speak, she raised her head high. I stand here not just for animals, but for a belief that every voice matters, especially the ones that can't utter their plight. The rancher's dismissive scoff echoed through the hall, but she remained unyielded. Each word was a shield, warding off the dismissive influence of their smirks. She laid bare the plight of the animals she had cared for, bolstered by statistics and personal anecdotes. A fawn caught in a hunter's snare, a stray dog finding solace in the warmth of her barn. The rancher's voice cut through, sharp and jagged. You think you can change things with your naive dreams? We live in the real world, Sarah. His disdain spilled over like an overflowing cup, but her response was both calculated and spontaneous, like a muscle memory honed under pressure. This is the real world, Mr. Lawson. It's the world where compassion outweighs profits, where a community can rise to better itself. As the exchange heated, an involuntary tightening gripped her stomach. She felt her breath become shallow. Yet within that discomfort lay a revelation. This confrontation wasn't solely about animals. It was a reflection of her deeper aspirations, her quest for authenticity and strength. The rallying cries of her supporters surged in her mind, amplifying her courage. At the close of the meeting, a heavier silence hung in the air, something almost palpable. Sarah could see uncertainty flickering across some of the faces of onlookers. Had a crack opened in the rancher's fortress of certainty? That night, she sat alone in the barn, the soft sounds of the animals comforting her. Clarity washed over her like warm sunlight through a window. The confrontation had forced her hand, compelled her to articulate her passions. Regardless of the meeting's outcome, she embraced a new reality. She was not just an advocate, but an integral part of this fight. In her journal, she penned thoughts swirling in her mind. This isn't just a challenge, it's a crucible for transformation. Each word solidified her growth. She now understood that every struggle was an opportunity to dig deeper. Yet even as hope blossomed within, an unsettling realization gripped her. The rancher was not just a figure of opposition. He wielded influence that could hinder her mission. How would she counter the more subtle tactics he might employ? With this ambiguous threat lingering, she felt a spark of determination ignite anew. These moments of self-discovery had to be matched with strategic foresight. If she truly wanted to protect the voiceless, she needed a plan, a tangible one that extended beyond passionate speeches. As she closed her journal, the wind howled outside, stirring a restlessness within her. What alliances could she forge to counter the looming challenges ahead? The walls of doubt still stood, but they no longer felt insurmountable. In the wake of revelations and resolve, the path ahead grew clearer. She needed to take action beyond words. Would she summon allies willing to stand against the rancher's influence? Could she turn this struggle into a force for good? The undeniable question weighed heavily in the air. What must she sacrifice to secure this fight for the voiceless? As the first light of dawn crept through the barn windows, casting gentle shadows on straw and hay, Sarah rose with a renewed sense of purpose. The night's contemplation had ignited a flame within her, a commitment not only to speak for the voiceless but to act decisively. She stepped outside, the chill of the morning air cutting through her, reminding her that the world was wide, waiting for her intervention. The path ahead was indeed daunting. The rancher's dismissive words echoed in her mind, pushing her to reflect more deeply on her strategy. It became clear that she needed allies, individuals who could not only echo her sentiments, but also amplify her voice. With that thought igniting her courage, she decided to reach out to fellow advocates who shared her vision. Her first visit was to Lisa, a local veterinarian known for her compassion and unwavering stance on animal rights. As Sarah pulled into the gravel driveway, she felt a mix of eagerness and trepidation. What if Lisa dismissed her agenda as merely a passionate whim? Inside the clinic, Sarah found Lisa in the middle of tending to a stray cat. The sight felt comforting, a reflection of the very essence of her mission. As Lisa turned, her warm smile disarmed Sarah's fears. "Sarah, it's been too long," Lisa said, wiping her hands on a towel. "What brings you here today?" With each word, Sarah revealed her vision for animal welfare, articulating her thoughts with a clarity that felt foreign yet empowering. Lisa listened intently, nodding as Sarah expressed the urgency of collective action, the need to confront the rancher's influence and misinformation. When Sarah paused, Lisa leaned closer, her eyes sharp with focus. "I see the fire in you, Sarah. We must ensure our voices are unified and strong. These battles require more than just passion. They demand strategy." The conversation flowed into plans and ideas. They discussed organizing community awareness campaigns, creating educational materials to inform the public about animal welfare, and finding a platform to rally support. Sarah felt alive. With each suggestion, Lisa mirrored her vision, enhancing it with professional expertise and experience. Days turned into weeks as the two women drew others into their effort. Sarah found meaningful connections with fellow advocates, dog trainers, and wildlife specialists, all united by the same deep-rooted desire for change. However, doubt would occasionally creep in. Was she really making a difference, or was this merely a futile endeavor against insurmountable odds? One outdoor meeting stood out, held at a local park. The sun hung high in the sky, enveloping the gathering with warmth. As members exchanged stories of animal rescues, Sarah's heart swelled. Their resolutions and individual commitments solidified a network of passionate fighters. Yet, she felt a pressing urgency. What if the rancher got wind of their efforts? Would he deploy the influential connections he held to dismantle their movement before it even gained traction? Fueled by both hope and anxious determination, Sarah considered this vulnerability a revealing opportunity for growth. She began drafting a strategic response, identifying potential weaknesses in the rancher's stance, planning counter-arguments, and second-guessing what might be leveraged against her burgeoning network. Then, while sorting through her newly accumulated resources, a chilling message appeared in her inbox. A news article announcing a new initiative by the rancher to expand his operations, including the use of aggressive measures against animal welfare advocates. "Is he threatening us?" Sarah whispered to herself, her heart pounding. The looming question now was clear. Would she cower in the shadow of his threat, or would she confront him head-on? In that moment, she recognized the definitive role she needed to assume, not just an advocate, but a leader prepared to face down opposition. As she stepped outside for some fresh air, the crisp wind filled her lungs, carrying with it the weight of a choice she was increasingly aware she had to make. Would she become the fiercely determined warrior for her cause, ready to rally her newfound allies to defy the rancher's machinations? The answers lay ahead, tangled in the unfolding battles yet to come. Sarah clenched her fists, standing taller than ever. One undeniable truth crystallized in her mind. This was just the beginning of a challenge that would define her. And as the sun dipped low in the sky yet again, she couldn't shake the thought. What sacrifices might be required of her to secure the future she envisioned for the voiceless? The following day dawned with a sense of urgency wrapping around Sarah like a heavy cloak. She sat at her kitchen table, the morning sun flickering through the window, casting light on her scattered notes and articles. The rancher's expansion plans hung over her like a dark cloud. The thought of him exerting more control over the animals she felt compelled to protect forced a decision into her mind. She needed to take her campaign into a more public domain. A plan began to form, fueled by her own growing determination and the rallying spirit of her allies. She grabbed a notepad to outline her next steps. A public meeting seemed like the ideal way to engage the community, to confront the rancher's misinformation head-on. However, new doubts crept in. What if no one showed up? What if the rancher's supporters drowned her out with their louder, more aggressive narratives? These thoughts churned in her mind, leading her to resolve that she needed a powerful speaker, someone who could command attention and respect. Then it struck her, Lisa. Not only was she a veterinarian, but she was also widely regarded and trusted by the community. If Lisa could stand beside her, the meeting would not merely be Sarah's fight, it would be a unified front. As she dialed Lisa's number, a wave of anxiety coursed through her. What if Lisa was too busy to help? What if she didn't believe in the way Sarah wanted to approach the situation? The phone rang twice before Lisa's familiar voice answered. "Hey Sarah, what's up?" With renewed conviction, Sarah pitched her idea. She felt the weight of her words firming as she spoke. "The rancher's plans are escalating, and we need to act. I want to hold a public meeting to inform the community and counter these threats. I need you there as a co-speaker." There was a pause on the other end. Sarah held her breath, anticipation riding high. Then Lisa responded, "I'm in. This is more than just a local issue. It's about standing up for what's right." Relief surged through Sarah, but it was accompanied by a deepening sense of responsibility. As they discussed logistics, her mind ping-ponged between hope and trepidation. Together, they crafted a shared narrative, one that highlighted community, ethics, and accountability, ensuring they built a case that resonated with values rather than conflict. The next few days zipped by in a flurry of activity. Sarah and Lisa, along with their small alliance of advocates, distributed flyers and utilized social media channels to spread the word. Each step felt like a small victory, yet beneath the surface, fear clawed at her. What if the rancher disrupted their meeting, using intimidation tactics to silence her? On the night before the meeting, a storm rolled in, wind rattling the windows and rain lashing against the roof. Sarah couldn't sleep, tossing amid flashes of lightning that mirrored her anxiety. Thoughts spiraled. What would happen if they faced hostility? Would she crumble under pressure, exposing her vulnerabilities? The storm passed, replaced by a sticky humidity that blanketed the day of the meeting. Sarah arrived early, heart racing, setting up chairs in the community hall, feeling the weight of every expectation pressing down on her. With every person that entered, her confidence swayed. Would they see her as a true leader or merely as an idealistic dreamer? As the audience gathered, murmurs filled the air. Seconds felt like hours, and her stomach churned with unease. Then, as the clock struck the hour, she took a deep breath and stepped to the front. But before she could say a word, the doors swung open with a jarring crash. There stood the rancher, his presence commanding and intimidating. The air thickened with tension. Sarah's heart raced as she realized the stakes had turned perilously high. She remained rooted where she stood, grappling with the sudden confrontation. The time had come to face the very real threat looming over her cause. Would she choose to stand her ground and continue the fight for the voiceless, or would she falter under pressure? In that moment of intense uncertainty, Sarah felt the room's collective energy draw into focus around her. How she decided to respond could alter the trajectory of her journey. And as the rancher stepped forward, Sarah felt an electric rush of determination. This wasn't just her fight anymore. It was a defining moment for all of them. Would she stand up? Would it be enough? The answer loomed ahead, waiting for her to seize it. Sarah's mind raced as she faced the rancher, his sneer cutting through the tension like a knife. Behind her, murmurs rippled through the crowd, a cacophony of confusion and fear. Each passing second seemed to stretch indefinitely, splitting her focus. She could feel the weight of her supporters' eyes, their expectations resting precariously on her shoulders. "What do you think you're doing here?" the rancher's voice boomed, dripping with disdain. His stance was aggressive, a silent threat hanging in the air. Sarah could sense the crowd bristling, uncertainty swirling among them. Would they rally to her side, or crumble under the rancher's heat? In that split moment, a spark flickered within her. It wasn't just fear. Anger welled up, mingling with a fierce resolve. Instead of retreating into silence, she took a step forward, challenging his dominance. "I'm here to ensure that every voice, especially those of the animals, is heard," she declared, her voice steady despite the tempest of emotions. "Your plans threaten not just wildlife, but our community's values." A ripple of surprise coursed through the room as some audience members shifted in their seats, surprised at her defiance. She seized the moment, her heart pounding, and continued, "This meeting is about transparency. It's about respecting life, not just profits." Every word felt like a piece of armor, fortifying her stance. The rancher glared, then laughed, a chilling sound that silenced her for a heartbeat. "You think you can win hearts with sentiment? You're out of your league." But his bravado seemed to waver, just slightly, as Sarah obliviously pressed on. "We're not talking about sentiment," she countered, adrenaline surging through her. "We're talking about integrity. Yes, the world of livestock is complex, but we must, find a way that prioritizes ethical treatment. That's what this community deserves." Fired by her passion, Sarah's eyes swept the room, catching glimpses of nodding heads and supportive faces. Each nod was a tiny victory, medal on her vest, urging her forward. There was a palpable shift as allies began to whisper encouragement. Sarah felt the momentum building, each comment a brick being laid in the foundation of her cause. For the rancher, the ambiance had darkened. With each moment that passed, his authority waned, and with it, the shadows he cast. In facing him, she was no longer just an idealist. She was an advocate, speaking for the voiceless. Lisa stood at the side, eyes wide but glimmering with admiration. As Sarah took a deep breath, she motioned for Lisa to join her. The veterinarian stepped forward, confidence replacing hesitation. "Sarah's right. The animals being affected by these plans don't have a voice, and it's time we ensure they are protected." The rancher's demeanor shifted yet again, his posture becoming defensive. "You think I care about the opinions of a few misguided folks? My livelihood is at stake, and I won't let you threaten that." "Livelihood should not come at the expense of others' lives," Sarah said, her conviction sharpening like a blade. "Together, we can find a path that considers all. We owe it to this community, to the animals, to fight for a solution that acknowledges every stakeholder." She could feel the room pulsating with energy, faces in the audience morphing from apprehensive to hopeful. It was a small shift, yet a significant one. As she locked eyes with a few supporters, she felt an unexpected sense of clarity washing over her. This was not just a stand against the rancher, it was a newfound commitment to a purpose much larger than herself, one that demanded courage, resilience, and unyielding resolve. As she spoke, the rancher's frustration mounted, and for a fleeting second she saw uncertainty flicker in his eyes. Perhaps now would be the moment he would reveal a weakness. Perhaps he could be persuaded to see a different narrative. But just as she opened her mouth to continue, the rancher sneered and spat out a challenge that echoed through the hall. "Then let's see what you are truly made of, Sarah. This is just one battle in a war you cannot win." The audacity of his words sent a shockwave through her, and an urgent realization hit her hard. This was not just about the animals anymore. This was a test of her own fortitude. The stakes had never been clearer, and failure felt entirely inadmissible now. As she prepared to answer, ready to redefine the terms of this conflict, every instinct within her screamed that she was on the brink of discovering something profound, not only about the rancher's motives, but about herself and her capacity to lead a true movement for change. Would she be able to show him that this fight would only intensify? The tension hung heavily in the air, thick with the potential for both conflict and revelation. In the weeks that followed the confrontation, the atmosphere in the community began to shift. Sarah stood resolute, her determination hardening into an unshakable conviction. The rancher had underestimated not only the strength of her voice, but the collective spirit of those who rallied behind her cause. The public meeting ignited a fire in her, and she vowed to push forward, focusing on concrete actions. Sarah collaborated closely with Lisa and their growing network of supporters. They organized a community fundraiser aimed at raising awareness and funds for animal rescue operations. Every conversation, every flyer they created, every social media post revealed not just an awareness of the plight of the animals, but a steadfast resolve to protect them. As the days passed, Sarah's confidence blossomed. Her voice found its place not just as a whisper in the wind, but as a clarion call that resonated through the townsfolk. Strangers approached her with words of encouragement and newfound respect. They saw her not just as a vet, but as a leader destined to make a difference. On the day of the fundraiser, Sarah felt a rare energy suffusing the air. The community hall brimmed with people, their excitement palpable. A local band played lively tunes while booths lined the hall, showcasing local crafts, pet products, and the stories of animals in need. She marveled at the sea of blue and green as donations poured in and supporters filled every chair. It felt like victory itself, woven into the vibrant banners they had hung, each one highlighting an animal saved or a life transformed. As Sarah took the stage, her heart raced with a mix of pride and purpose. Gone was the woman who hesitated in the doorways of doubt. Now she stood firmly in her authenticity. She spoke passionately about the need for compassion and ethical treatment of animals, reminding the audience of the lives they could change together. The ethereal moment of connection came as she shared Spirit's story, the horse who had ignited her fire. As she recounted their journey together, the audience listened with rapt attention. "Spirit showed me that every creature, every life matters. We are their voice now," she declared boldly. "Let's extend our hands, not just to animals in distress, but to one another in solidarity as we reshape our community's values." Cheers erupted, reverberating against the walls, washing over her like a wave of acceptance. The worry of judgment faded, replaced by a realization that she had forged a new identity, no longer merely a veterinarian, but a beacon of hope. Then, as the fundraiser neared its close, an unexpected figure appeared. The rancher stepped through the door, his presence commanding. This time, however, the atmosphere shifted. The crowd murmured, but Sarah held her ground. It was a moment not of fear, but of opportunity, showcasing what her voice could now achieve. "Mr. Lawson," she greeted, her tone firm yet respectful. "I recognize your presence here. It shows that even you must see the change that is happening in this community." The rancher eyed the crowd, assessing the palpable unity that bound them. Instead of the dismissal typically expected, he responded with measured tone. "I see you've gathered quite a following, Sarah." "Change often births skepticism," she replied, emboldened by the answers she now held within. "But here, we're united by common values and respect for all lives that inhabit this land. I extend my hand not just in challenge but in invitation. Let us work together for a better future that honors our shared interests." For a moment, the crowd held its breath, waiting for his retort, but he simply nodded, their eyes locking in an unspoken understanding. "Very well, let's talk," he conceded, surprising even Sarah. This was a pivotal turn in their dynamic. In his recognition, she found undeniable validation, not just of her initiative, but of her determined spirit. As the knives of doubt dulled, she felt a profound shift within herself. Each obstacle she had faced had transformed her resilience, carving a path toward not only a successful fundraiser, but also the very foundation of a new community discourse. In the overflowing hall, laughter and collaboration spurred upward, a collective promise of solidarity, hope, and renewed faith in their shared cause. She had not merely released herself from old ideals, but had forged an unbreakable bond with countless hearts. Weeks later, at a celebratory gathering held in honor of the animals saved under the initiative, Sarah stood alongside her daughters in spirit, a resplendent presence. She exuded confidence, content to know that with each mile they traveled, both animals and humans alike would thrive. The rancher had kept his promise, engaging in meaningful discussions to find the balance between agriculture and ethics in animal treatment. Sarah saw in him a reflection of her journey, one who had long grappled with tradition, yet was open to evolving perspectives. In this renewed reality, Sarah felt fulfilled. She had achieved not just a professional goal, but had liberated herself from the doubts of her past. She was no longer living in the shadows of others' expectations. She had stepped boldly into the light of her own future. With spirit at her side, she celebrated not just the animals saved, but her own transformational journey, a profound personal achievement characterized by unwavering conviction. Her heart swelled with pride as she looked at her daughters, their smiles radiant in shared joy. Together they were building a legacy rooted in compassion. As the sun set over the Montana horizon, painting the sky vivid with empowerment, Sarah knew this was not just the end, but an inspiring new beginning, one that demanded respect and action, boldly beckoning all to join her in the unwavering pursuit of justice for those unable to speak for themselves. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and boost these stories to those who need to hear them. Comment below with your reactions and theories about this inspiring ending. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this incredible conclusion.